Updates. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the Monte Carlo plants that we added in the little container that's on top of the predator tank. So just to fill you in on what's new with the tank, I went ahead and added on my old light to this aquarium because I found a new way to deal with algae. And the reason why algae is such a big issue for me is because this light was really strong. When I had this light on my tank, it caused all kinds of algae issues, and my whole front panel will be covered in algae within 1 week. I went ahead and modified my light slightly just so I can get less algae. Along with that, I went ahead and made a DIY algae scraper that's very easy to use compared to my old Algae Mitt, which is this thing. I went ahead and bought this Algae Mitt hamster thing, and I used to use this to wipe my glass, but it got kind of annoying because this would gather a lot of sand and I would be afraid that I would scratch the front panel. So I went ahead and stopped using this, and now I'm just using this to wipe off my aquarium whenever I do maintenance. So speaking of the algae scraper, this is what I'm talking about. It's an old credit card attached to a very long PVC pipe that I can just kind of get into the aquarium and don't have to get my hands wet. And using a scraper is a lot easier than using like a algae pad and a cloth or something, because instead of rubbing the algae off, you're using a scraper to push the algae off. With glass aquariums, you can use almost anything to scrape it off the front of your aquarium because glass isn't as prone to scratch as acrylic. So when it comes to choosing which type of material to use to scrape off that algae in the front of your acrylic, it's known that credit cards won't scratch acrylic, so go ahead and find an old credit card, give it a shot, and you'll be surprised with the results. The reason why I put this light back on is because with those 2 light bulbs that I added to this aquarium in the last video, my bikers wouldn't eat with those lights on. They wouldn't eat, they wouldn't come out, they would polypile. Those bulbs were just way too bright. Although the Ode would eat, the Anabis would eat, everyone else would just kind of hide. I would just have food sitting on the substrate all day until those lights turned off. But I noticed that once I turned those lights off, that's when they'll start eating again. So the lights left the bikers uncomfortable. I gave them about a week or 2 to get used to it. They weren't liking it, so I went ahead and took it off and switched back to this one. Although I like the old DIY lights better, they seem to like this one better. They're a lot more comfortable with this one, and I guess that's all that matters. While we're on the topic of lights, I went ahead and switched up the lighting system for my goldfish tank, and I'll show you how that looks. So with the goldfish tank, I went ahead and took that old light bulb out and switched it out with the LED strip that I had on the Monte Carlo container. I noticed that the light bulbs that I used for the setup were really strong, so whenever I had it on, it was just a big beam of lights blinding the goldfish, and it was just a bad look. So I went ahead and switched it out with the LED lights that I had from Monte Carlo, and I feel like this light here is way more comfortable for the goldfish. I can't really move this to show you guys the amount of lights, but if you can tell through the glare, that's how much light is going into this little tub. It's not a lot. The plants in here aren't too demanding, so it's actually the perfect amount of light for me to see the fish. Look at them. But honestly, I can't tell if they're relaxed or stressed. They just kind of act the same all the time. But these 2 are doing good. Any kind of lighting I add to this aquarium, they seem to enjoy it. So since this light was the same LED strip off the Monte Carlo tank, let me show you what I'm lighting the tank with now. Bam! This was a light that I built for a 10-gallon aquarium, and the LEDs actually ran from this side here to that side. So there was a whole lot of LEDs here, but I built it on a circuit board, and I went ahead and just snipped that side off and snipped this side off and kept it on the same glass. So it's the perfect amount of LEDs to fit this container, so it doesn't have light bleed into the polypter's tank. So if I were to turn this off right now, it perfectly covers this container, and it doesn't have too much light bleed into the aquarium itself, which is cool. This light right here, this brightness right here is from my spotlight, which is right there. If I were to leave the LEDs on, there will be this much more LEDs, and there'll just be that much more light into the aquarium. Same with this side, they'll have this much more LEDs, and it'll pretty much shine into the aquarium here. That's something I don't really need, so this amount of LED is perfect. All I gotta do is find a shorter piece of glass so I can replace this glass, and that way it'll be kind of like flush here. But for now, it's working perfectly fine, so I'm gonna go ahead and leave it on this piece of glass. Plus, I went ahead and added my switches here, so the extra amount of glass is perfect support for these guys right here. So just taking aside the aquarium, the Monte Carlo is doing pretty good. I went ahead and bought another pot and added it to the tank. Monte Carlo is a kind of slow growing plant without CO2, so that's why I went ahead and bought another plant. I'm not too sure if these are runners, the ones in the middle with the little growth, but they don't look like they're dying. They look okay, and I did have a little bit of melt back, but that's to be expected when it comes to getting new plants. So I'm pretty excited on seeing the growth of these guys here. And plus with these Monte Carlos, they have no problem with pearling. Every time I look at these guys, they're always pearling in the morning, and they kind of stop pearling at night. Since I can't really get a clip of them pearling now, I'll go ahead and record a little clip and put it in right here. As you can see, the plants are pearling, and they're pearling a lot. So that's a very good sign for me, at least. Every time I had plants, especially carpeting ones, the rule of thumb for me is if they pearl, they're doing good. So I'm glad they're pearling for me right now, and I can't wait to see what this container looks like all filled out. And you can see the shrimp are doing good as well. There's a little bit of growth right there, a little bit of molt. I'm having a little bit of issues with algae growing on the walls of this tank. I don't know if I want to scrub it off or keep it there. I think it'll look pretty cool if it had like a algae background or something. So yeah, I'm kind of torn in the middle of keeping it clean or keeping algae walls. If I can grow nice green beard algae on the sides of this little aquarium, that'll be pretty sick. But if I can't and it just kind of looks like this the whole time, then I might just end up scraping it off. The left side looks pretty good next to the GoPro, but that back wall looks kind of nasty, so I'm kind of torn in between. I was thinking about adding some life into this aquarium for a couple of reasons. One, this system has a snail problem. I have snails throughout the tank. They finish off the food that my bikers don't eat, and they pretty much live in the substrate. Sometimes they do find their way up the lift tube and into the container where the Monte Carlos are. So I was thinking about putting a little pea puffer in there. Reason being is with the pea puffer in this tank, it can hunt the snails that get into the aquarium and pretty much have an unlimited supply of snails that come into the tank. And pea puffers aren't really known to jump out, so I wouldn't have to worry about that. And another thing to add is, even though this container is a little small for a pea puffer, the water that's coming from the big tank is getting into this little container. So it's not like the water quality is going to be the same as you just putting a pea puffer in a 1 gallon. It's pretty much getting the water from my big aquarium, and it's getting filtered with the K1. It's not that bad, but at the same time, I don't want to keep a pea puffer in a little cramped area. So that's something that's kind of debatable. But if you had some opinions on that, I'd like to hear about it. It would look pretty cool if it had some little fish in there, but probably not like guppies or big tetras. Maybe Danionellas or Chili rasboras, something along the lines of that. Nanofish, to be exact. Adding life into this little container is definitely something that I'll look into when the Monte Carlo grow out a little bit more and they actually stand a chance to fish that dig and whatnot. But that's definitely something that I will entertain when that time comes. So that's it for today's video. I just wanted to give you guys an update on the Monte Carlo and the slight tweaks and changes I did for the aquarium out in the garage. So I'd like to thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for the next one. Peace, guys.